Here's a little information about Richard Hitchcock and what the commander of Wellington St John has been really up to and why he resigned. Now, I was a child from 5 to 11. We used to go in the bushes there, and he used to make us hold his cock. And when I met up with Colin Surridge 20 years later, the first thing he said to me was, "Your brother's a sick cunt." And that was because he used to make him hold his cock too. And he used to come on these children, and they were 5 years old, and some of them were older, and around the streets also our father said someone was going around offering to pull children's pants down. If they pulled their pants down, he would pay them money, and he had a job and was working when he was doing this because he had a car, and he had money. So that was our childhood, and every time my parents would go out, he would babysit us, and the first thing he would do was make us strip off naked. 5 years old, make us strip off naked and stand there and fucking play with our cocks and play with his cock. And when I was a little kid, my mum said, "What's going on over there?" And Richard said, "Oh, nothing," grabbed me away from her, and then fucking took us into the bushes and fucking molested us. So this is what happened, and he stuffed the child's minds of many, many children, and if he was working and he had a car, he was an adult. Hello? Anyway, so it gets on and on and on, and, all through my life, I sent him messages, "You've stuffed my life, mate. I can't handle it. A life of drugs and a life of this and not being able to pay drug bills." I think I tried to blackmail him once and sent him messages saying, "Look, the mongrel mob want to take me out. Can you help me out?" And he brought me to his house, and, mate, that just made it fucking worse. He didn't give me any money. He just offered to give me a place to live, and fuck, man. And then he took me to his work, right? He had this work. And he took me to the computer room and he goes, "In this computer room, we can just put you in there and we can shut the door and then all the oxygen disappears and you'll be dead. So don't get locked in this computer room." And I was like, fuck, this guy's a fucking maniac. Anyway, many years later, I decided that I'd had enough, and I came out about it. Some bad things happened in my life. From the circle, people who are abused end up doing horrible things, don't they? Just look at these gangsters. Hello, knock, knock. Is there anyone there? Come on, you gangsters who were abused. You know that you've been suffering, and this is how we can free it for everyone. And bring it out and let everyone know that it wasn't your fault, all the things you did. Because these bastards have just got away with it, and they're still getting away with it. So I came out about it, and the counsellors were from Stop that went and visited him, and that's called Sexual Treatment of Paedophiles. And they went up to his house after I admitted that he sexually abused me. And they went up to his house, and he was the St John youth manager, right? And this is the commander of Wellington St John now. And they went up to his house, and he had a 14-year-old child hanging off his leg like a bad smell. And the lady from Stop was a Wahine Mary, a beautiful lady. She used to bring in feeds and all this and try and help us people that had been abused, but oh no. And then there was a guy, Jimmy, there, right? And I don't care if we signed a contract, you can just get stuffed, a lot of yous. And the contract was so that they could cover over sexual abuse. They would advise people not to go to the police so it would bring down the numbers and the crimes. And they would look better. But the Wahine Mary there was like, he had a 14-year-old boy hanging off him. And I said, well, he always takes in troubled boys and has them stay at his house. And Jimmy, the guy there, was like, oh, no, you can't go to the police. No, it's all right. He was fine. And that was that. He resigned as regional youth manager. At the time, he said, and he showed them that. He said, look, I'll resign as regional youth manager. And Jimmy was happy at covering over the pedo. And I thought that was it. But later on in life, I found out he carried on teaching 5-year-old penguin children in St John's in Featherston. And he still teaches them today, mate. And not only that, he went around all the cancer kids and all that. No, if you go back through the Wayback Machine and all through his photos on his Facebook, you will see all these little kids hanging off him. I saw one photo, he had like 5 kids hanging off him at once. And all he used to have on his Facebook was photos of kids hanging off him. Now, come on, these paedophiles, they put themselves in these jobs. And a clear sign of a paedophile is a bisexual man. Because paedophiles like men and women, okay? And people that abuse people do not like men and women. They only like one sex, and it's highly likely they were abused as a child, okay? And they're not actually a paedophile. A paedophile is a person who likes both sex and likes prepubescent children, and it's extremely hard for them to change because they weren't changed as a little kid. They just had this fantasy of little kids, both sexes. So after this, that was fine, and then slowly but surely, I said to my mum, look, I can't handle coming and seeing you here living with Richard. I'd like for you to have your own house, you know? And she wanted to have her own house. She hated living with this guy, but he controlled her with his narcissistic behaviour, and instead of her having her own house, which was my stepfather's dying wish with the money, he took the money away from her, made her pay rent, and then he started to close it down. He started to turn my mother, every time I go there, you know, you shouldn't have said that to Richard. Now he's annoyed at me. And every time I went and saw her, he would go off at my mother about something, and Mum would ring me up and say, oh, you shouldn't have said that, you know, oh, rah, rah, rah. And it was all Richard trying to split us apart. And then when he left Defence Force and he got his job at MFAT, well, she started getting all these strange messages. And I was having an argument with him, and I said, listen, Richard, you're nothing but a fucking piece of shit, you know, as you do with your brothers that have fucking molested you and screwed your head your whole fucking life. And I sent him this message, and I was not messaging my mother at the time, and he rerouted that message using his job at the Five Eyes. And we all know that what you're up to, that's why you give them diplomatic immunity. He rerouted that message to my mother, and my mother never spoke to me again. Because of the message I sent to Richard Hitchcock ended up going to my mother. And he just totally removed her from my life so he could get away with stealing her money. And I didn't even want the money. The money was supposed to go to my nieces. You know, I stood in front of my mother and I said, Mum, don't give me any money. Give it to Kayla because she has children and she'll need to buy a house. And Richard said, yep, I agree. I don't need any money. She needs to buy a house. Yeah, give it all to the children. Just don't worry about me. And Mum was like, listen, I'm giving most of it to Kayla and Millie, and I'm going to leave what's left equally between you boys. Now, Richard got away with having 400k hidden from the family, wasn't even in the will, still hiding in Australia. Don't know whether he's done a deal with Paul Hitchcock. Highly likely they've both paid off their houses and ripped everyone off. I tell you, mate, these people are scum. They abuse people and then rip them off. And, you know, all I wanted to do was live my life and see my mother. And I found out I told him I'm not using this email anymore. And then when she went downhill, he got his lawyer to send a message to that email, knowing that I wasn't using the email anymore because I was being hacked and harassed, and it was him. He was the guy that was harassing me and hacking me, frying my computers, causing me all this harm. I tell you, mate, these New Zealand police are the most disgusting people on earth. They are shielding this paedophile, and I just can't believe it. I cannot believe I'm living a life where the New Zealand police are that corrupt. They're going to let this guy get away with fraud, ripping off his entire family, and being a paedophile while teaching kids every Thursday in St John's and Featherston. They must be paedophiles.